COVID pandemic, a multidimensional perspective. So to begin with the session today, I request Dr. Annapurna Ma'am, Vice Principal Arts, St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, to begin the session. Annapurna Ma'am.
Thank you, Aparna.
Hello, ma'am.
A very good evening to all of you and a warm welcome. A special welcome and thank you to the guest and the speaker of the day, Dr. Mansi Farke, who will be introducing us and discussing various aspects of the rupees 20 lakh crore, I hope I'm right, economic stimulus package that the PM announced for our country in order to tackle the pandemic that has affected our economy. I'm sure in some time you all will be plunging into the various sectors that it would help. You would be discussing and comparing it to other countries. I just read up, it is 10% of our GDP, whereas Japan has something greater than 20%. So that is going to be our area of interest. But I think the best takeaway for our students when we host such webinars is that it challenges them to think. It creates a kind of curiosity in them, and it also ignites new ideas in them, especially because they are going to be the future of our country. Some of them will also be part of policy formations. So I'm sure this is going to be highly beneficial to all of them. And I do appreciate the Department of Economics and the quartet of that department. The quartet term, I'm sure our Xavierites would know much about it. So that is Dr. Aditi Sawant, Professor Manali, and Professor Aparna, and of course, Professor Brother Vivian. I appreciate that you have taken this up and introduced such matters, current serious matters to our students. Thank you. Let's begin the session.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I request Aditi ma'am to say a few words.
Thank you, Annapurna ma'am. Thank you so much, to give so much information. And
a little homework, Aditi.
Yeah. And on a lighter note, I just discussed with Annapurna ma'am that she can increase the package, not just 20 lakhs crore, increase the package to 40 lakhs crore, maybe more than that, because that is the need of the time.
And I become the PM.
So on behalf of Department of Economics, St. Xavier's College, I welcome you all for the third session of the webinar. And my special thanks to our professor, my colleague, Aparna Kulkarni, for putting special efforts to organize the whole thing. And today's guest of honor, Dr. Mansi Farke, thank you so much to accept our request to share your views and ideas on economic implication of COVID-19. I'm 100% sure that today's participants will be highly benefited after listening to your talk on this. So without further ado, I request Aparna to start the session, and all the best to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I also request Hermione ma'am to say something to all of us. Hermione ma'am.
Hermione, unmute yourself.
Hermione ma'am.
Aparna, ask Hermione ma'am to unmute herself.
Hermione ma'am, please unmute yourself to speak to us.
Can Ria do that?
Ria?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. One second.
Yeah, if you can do that, just help her.
All right.
Hello.
Yes?
Yeah, yes. You're audible now.
Yes. So I'm happy to be back amidst all of you and a webinar. I'm very impressed. I attended one of the sessions earlier and I thought it was very informative. And I'm sure today's session will be interesting and informative too. Looking forward, Dr. Farke, to your views. It's a much criticized package and therefore one really looks forward to this. But hi to everybody, and I hope we have a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Yeah, now it takes me to the formal thing first, which is the introduction of today's speaker, Dr. Manasi Phadke. She's a consultant economist and faculty at Gokhale Institute, Pune. She has done her MA from Gokhale Institute, then MPhil from IDR, then PhD from Gokhale Institute again in political economy of fiscal federalism in India. She has been an economic advisor to Maratha Chambers of Commerce, Pune, and there she has consulted the institute. Also, she has authored several books and papers while consulting that particular institute. She is a very regular columnist, a prolific writer in various newspapers, both in English as well as Marathi. She has authored several books on various economic issues. Apart from that, she is a trained Hindustani classical singer and a Bharatnatyam dancer. So I think she is a rare combination of art as well as science. So I welcome you, ma'am, Dr. Manasi Phadke, and for you to deliver your lecture. Thank you so much. Now I request all the participants to please mute themselves. So we begin the session now.
All right. Thank you so much, Aparna. Thank you for all the warm words. Thank you, Annapurna ma'am. We haven't met before, but it's lovely to see you on the webinar. And thank you, Aditi, who is who has been a co-student with me in Ruparel. So it's wonderful to see her here on the webinar as well. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be part of this. And without any further ado, let me just get on with our topic, because there's a fair amount of stuff that we really will have to discuss today. Before I take you to the presentation, I've made a formal presentation because I think some facts and figures, when you see some graphs, when you see it makes more of an impact on your minds. Before I begin with the presentation, I just have a couple of things to say. The first is that I'm aware that we have a fairly heterogeneous crowd with us, right? So we have FY students all the way to TY. We have faculty members, and I believe we have faculty members from outside Xavier's colleges as well. A few of my faculty friends from Pune have joined in as well. So I really am a little hazy about where to pitch it. So I'm going to try and create the most common minimum denominator that we can, create today. If anybody has a problem, since this is a webinar and not a live session, I'd request you to write down your questions and we will take them at the end. It may not be possible to do a back and forth through the webinar, right? That was the first thing. The second thing is that the topic which has been given to me is to evaluate the stimulus package or the fiscal package announced by Modi Sarkar with special reference to the center-state relationships, right? Now, this is a seriously exotic kind of a topic that you all have given me. So let me firstly compliment the economics department for thinking of such an exotic topic, because to weave in fiscal federalism into a stimulus package was a kind of interesting, interface for me as well. And I've tried some stuff with that, which I would like to now present. So let me go across and just share my screen. Aparna or one of you, could you just tell me if this is visible, people? It is?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right, great. Okay. Yeah. So we'll be doing evaluation of economic stimulus package in India with respect to center-state relations, right? This is the topic that has been given to me. Now, before we begin, I thought that it might be fruitful for all of us to take a quick background look or a quick background check on the power balance in the center-state relations in India. Now, I would request everybody to just look at the graph, which is what should be catching your eye. There is a seesaw here with something which is weighing down on one end of the seesaw. That something is the union government. Okay. In India, what we have is a quasi-federal constitution, right? So we do have federalism, lekin uska jo avatar hai na, that is not completely federal. It is quasi-federal. Okay. What do you mean by quasi-federal? That we have an all-powerful center. Now, this by itself, and this will interest the students to know, that this by itself is a very interesting topic of research, that why did India opt for a constitution which is federal in nature, but which gives more powers to the center. Now, this, I'm not going to get into it today, but let me just say a couple of quick sentences on this because it's very interesting. This is the entire debate of the Legislative Assembly, which was formed at the time of independence. And you know, this, the Constituent Assembly, and this entire assembly was revetting around two focal points. One, which was Mahatma Gandhi's focal point, who was saying, let India go to her villages. The second point was taken up by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, who was saying that we are not yet ready to go into our villages. Such is the level of superstitions and casteism in our villages that we probably need to have a more powerful center. We are not ready for a very decentralized mode. Now, in the end, it was Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's outlook which prevailed in the Constituent Assembly, and India got for herself a constitution which gives overweighing powers to the center. So we have got a quasi-federal constitution. Now, the reflection of this power balance or imbalance, if you will, is also seen in the fiscal federalism design. What is fiscal federalism? How are the taxes divided between the center and the states? And oops, you again have this big ball here, which is the center, saying that the taxes are mine. But this seesaw changes its shape when it comes to expenses. Okay, so let me go through this step by step. Tax revenues have been concentrated in the hands of the center. Okay, all the major taxes, especially in the pre-GST era, all the major taxes that you can think of, income tax, wealth tax, excise, customs, all of these were concentrated in the hands of the center. Why is this the case? That is obvious, because if you have different states having different income tax regimes, it will lead to a race to the bottom, you know, where all the states will keep on offering lower and lower tax rates to attract investors. And, you know, you might have a race to a bottom with everybody really losing that race, right? So in most countries who have opted for federal systems, you find that taxes are largely concentrated in the hands of the center. This is what is happening in India also. However, we have such a diverse system, such a diverse country, that each state, you know, some are hilly, some are coastal, some are developed, some are educated, some are illiterate, some have female feticide issues, some have a huge amount of girl children going into the schools. So we have a very huge diaspora of states. Each state has its own unique problems, own unique strengths, and hence own unique expenditure policy. So if you take a look at the total government expenditures in India, you will find that 58% of these expenditures are undertaken by the states. Now you see why this seesaw is so unbalanced. If all the tax are concentrated with the center, but if the expenses are largely being undertaken by the states, then you obviously have a situation where the states are going to start grumbling that, hey, I need to have some more money. How do you expect me to spend if you're not going to give me taxes? Correct? So clearly, there is a case for transfers from the center to the states. And believe it or not, this is going to be the bone of contention today when we talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat. I'm well aware that the topic is Atmanirbhar, and I'm coming to that inside a minute. Okay, so clearly now we have a case of transfers moving from the center to the states. COVID-19 pandemic has sharpened this need for transfers, because the first line of defense, people, has come from the states. Na? Who are the entities who are going to do the testing? Who are the entities who are going to arrange for hospital beds? Who are the entities who are going to do advertisements saying that ghar mein raho, ye karo, wo nahi karo, okay, use masks, this, that, everything. The first line of defense is coming in from the states, and hence COVID-19 has sharpened the need for transfers. Correct? States are now increasingly saying we need more and more funds from the center. So in this context, I think 2 points become very relevant for us today. One point is the package which has been announced by the center, and Annapurna ma'am some time ago told you that it's a 20 lakh crore package. She's done her homework right. Is this 20 lakh crore package really, I mean, in effect, is it going to be equivalent to 20 lakh crore? Is it going to be enough for all of the states put together? And really, does it benefit every state? Or is a bulk of this stimulus package going to go to a few select states? The moment we answer these two questions, well, we are doing an assessment of the package that we have, correct? So today we will first be discussing the fiscal federalism design, and through that, never forget that what we are really trying to answer is these last two questions. Let me go ahead. Okay, so now the transfers to the state governments come in from two routes. Okay. Students, I want you all to understand, or I hope that you're listening very carefully and you've understood that all of the taxes are concentrated with the center, right? Now, what happens is there is something which is called as a finance commission, And currently we have the 15th Finance Commission headed by Dr. N.K. Singh, right, which gives recommendations to the central government that from all of the taxes collected by the center, how much can we share with the states? Okay, so what do the Finance Commission transfer? So this is one transfer from the center to the states. Whatever are the taxes, usme se koi share will come to the states. This year it is going to be 41%. Okay, so these are recommended by the FC, by the Finance Commission. This is a one-way flow from the center to the states. And I want you all to understand that this is something very exciting, that Finance Commission transfers are unconditional, no questions asked. It's your money, spend it, is what is told to the states. The second type of transfers comes from centrally sponsored schemes. Great example, which is currently in the news, is Manrega, right? Which is the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, right? Under which you might be aware, 40,000 crores additional over and above the 61,500 crores that were already budgeted for has been given now by the center. So the other way in which the center can transfer more money to the states is through CSS, through centrally sponsored schemes. One of which is Manrega. The other, which you might have heard of in the news, is the PMGSY. This is the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, or think of the National Health Mission, think of Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. All of these are centrally sponsored schemes. Now, these are different from the Finance Commission transfers. Okay, here what is happening? Of all the taxes which are collected by the center, 41% are shared with the states, no questions asked. Here what is happening? Here the center says that, okay, we are declaring a 61,500 crore package for Manrega. Additional 40,000 crore has now been declared. So there is a total 1 lakh crore which the center will spend on Manrega. So the center has made a provision for these transfers. But please understand that here, these schemes are partially funded by the states themselves. That means if Maharashtra government wants to take 10,000 crores of the 1 lakh crore from the center, it will have to itself put in another 2,000 crores in order to make this scheme work. CSS people are partially funded by the states themselves. So already you have a situation where if you take a look at the poorer states who don't have their own money from their own pocket to put into this scheme, no matter what Mrs. Sitaraman announces in terms of an Atmanirbhar Bharat, some states will not be able to access that money at all because they do not have the rest of the money in their own pockets, right? Is this a Modi Sarkar issue? No, this is a federal design issue, right? This is how our schemes have been functioning for many years now, but it is something that I want you all to carry in your minds before you start analysis of the scheme. Let us go one step ahead. So now I'm going to discuss my presentation into two parts. The first part is what is happening on the FC transfers and what impact does it have on the Atmanirbhar Bharat package. And part two will be where we are discussing the CSS. Okay. So part one is about tax transfers from the center to the states. Okay. Now we are really going to dirty our hands and get deep inside the tax structure of this country. So I want everybody to be actively involved with what is happening here. The Finance Commission, people, it defines a divisible pool of taxes. Okay, so what it says is which of the central taxes should be divided or shared with the states. Ye is par pehle decision hota hai. Now they've taken that decision. I'm not getting into the nitty-gritty of it. And the 15th Finance Commission has decided that 41% of this divisible pool will be shared with all of the states put together, right? So if the central government collects 100 rupees of taxes, 41 rupees will be given to the states, right? In the pre-GST era, that is before 2016, states used to charge various taxes themselves. For example, they had a VAT, they had octroi, they had advertisement tax, and many other taxes. All of these taxes have now been subsumed into the GST. So states, you know, when the GST came on platform, states were very, very reluctant to join that wagon because states were saying that, hey, you know, my income is going off. You know, you are asking me to subsume all of my taxes into your kitty. So what happens to me? So the center told the states, worry not. Main hu na was a signal that the center gave to the states. And it told the states that, look, join the bandwagon, come on to the GST platform. And if you share, you have any shortfall in your revenue as compared to what you have right now, we will make sure that that shortfall will be compensated through the GST route. Okay, so all states agreed that they would become part of the goods and service tax regime. And what did the center say? That we will compensate the states if you have any revenue shortfall after switching to the GST regime. The center has said that we will do this for 5 years after adoption. Okay, now what this center has done is it takes the state revenue taxes in 2016, and every year it says that 14% growth rate. If there is a 14% growth rate, then how much should be the GST? How much should be the taxes of the state governments? That is calculated. And if the actual taxes collected by the states are smaller than the calculated taxes in this way, then the compensation is paid by the center through a compensation cess. I hope everybody is understanding this. I am unable to get a non-verbal or verbal cue from you all. So I know this is tough, but please bear with me. So what has happened is that every year states should get a 14% growth rate in their tax revenue. If they are not getting it, the center has promised that we will compensate you, right? Okay. How does this compensation happen? Take a look at this, right? There's a high-end SUV. What the center is saying is that there are certain luxury goods, or at times there are certain goods which are seen to be not, or they seem to be addictive goods, hazardous goods, or you might want to say non-moral goods. Okay, for example, pan masala, gutka. What has the center done? There are huge GST rates on such kind of products, on luxury products as well as addictive products. So for example, if you take a look at high-end SUVs in India, they have a 50% GST total, of which 28% is the GST tax rate and 22% is a cess. Okay, so there is an overall 50% GST that you have to pay if you're planning to buy a really high-end SUV. Now, what happens is, if any state says कि भाई मेरे पास पैसे हैं नहीं, my revenue is falling short, then from this cess which is collected by the center, they compensate the states. Okay, so if the cess paid to the states is less than the cess collected by the center, the remaining amount with the center is also shared with the states because it becomes part of the divisible pool. Okay, now in financial year 18, that is 17-18, and in the financial year 18-19, you would like to know that the compensation that was paid by the center to the states has been less as compared to the cess collected. And now people, we are ready to understand the COVID impact. What do you think is going to happen with COVID? Well, with COVID, the first and foremost thing which is going to happen is that states have stopped earning, correct? No? States, how will the state collect the GST? If people are not buying goods and they're not sourcing services, there is no question of the state earning any GST at all. So the first thing which has been happening because of this entire COVID pandemic is all the states have gone running to the center saying that you promised me. You promised कि जितना shortfall होता है आप compensate करोगे, अब आप compensate करो, correct? So now the center suddenly woke up and said, oh my God, everybody has come running to me asking me for a compensation. Do we have a cess? Now, unfortunately, Mrs. Sitharaman has also realized that this cess has also fallen in this 1 year. Just as the states are saying कि कोई goods and services खरीद नहीं रहा है, वैसे भी high-end things are also not being bought by the people. So what Mrs. Sitharaman has realized is that the cess collected by the center is lesser as compared to the cess demanded by the states. You are already staring at the first big issue in your entire GST stroke COVID stroke issues platform. Correct? So let us go through to this and understand what is happening here. Guys, before we read all of this stuff, I would just like you all to look at this graph here, right? You have, okay, so this is where, NTA 1.0 began its program. So we have a big change in the kind of growth rate that was seen here up to 2012. From 2013 onwards, we went up nicely, right? This 2017 is the year which took on some beating, primarily because of demonetization, also because we moved on to the GST platform. So you can see that the growth rate came down, it stabilized a bit, and oops, this is a scary thing to happen to an economy, right? Now this is only up to Q2. So students, when we're looking at a financial year, there are 4 quarters that we look at. The first quarter is April, May, June. The second quarter is July, August, September. Third quarter is October to December. and fourth quarter is Jan to March. The first half of the year is called as H1. The second half of the year is called as H2. Sorry, this might seem very rudimentary to many people, but this is the H1 growth rate that you're seeing here on the screen. Okay. Now, I'd like you all to understand that even before COVID hit us, we were in a bad shape. Right? COVID was, so to say, the proverbial icing on a totally non-palatable cake. Right? This is not a cake at all. It was a cake gone bad. Okay. So in H1 already we were having a problem. Our growth rate had come down to 4.5%. Now the state component of GST, which is SGST, hence had already fallen drastically between April 2019 to December 2019, and states were falling short of the 14% growth rate. Take a look at this graph. This is an interesting graph. Here what I've done is, I'm just showing you the green panel, which is the GST central collection in 1819, and the blue panel, which is the GST collection in 1920. You will see that here the blue panel is more. That means this saal GST collection zyada raha. This is in the month of March. Correct, no? This is the month of April. Okay. So in April this year, our GST collection was higher. May it was higher. Almost all of the months it is higher except for these two problem months. The problem children have been September and October. Okay. Now, if the GST collection this year, that indicated by the blue bar, has been higher than the last year, indicated by the green bar, then slowdown kahan pe hai? Aren't we earning more? So why does everybody says there is a slowdown? So look at now what I have written here. Why is it said that the slowdown had started in H1 of FY20? This is because the growth rate of the tax collection is 4 to 6% only for most months. If you're factoring an inflation of even about 4%, it means that the real growth rate of taxes is only 0 to 2%. Bad news. Correct, na? For an economy such as ours, which is expected to grow at about 7%, your tax collection cannot grow at only 2%, na? For heaven's sake. You need to have at least 5, 6, 7% growth rate in tax collection. So slow down to tha. Don't look at these nominal numbers. They're always misleading. Okay, when you look at growth rates, you start understanding that real numbers is what I want. Fine. So as the year progressed, the state started saying, "Arey, shortfall hai, mujhe zyada paise chahiye." They started demanding more compensation, but the center did not have funds to give them. Take a look at what's happening to the central collections. Right? Till here we are still okay, and then in Feb we are going down some more. In March it is bad, and in April it is really terrible. Okay. Now, just to get some numbers clear, 1 lakh crore is roughly the GST collection per month. And if you take a look at these first few months, we have roughly been over above it, till here. Correct? Lekin yahan pe, in the month of April, we have managed to collect only 41,000 crore in that month, which is 40% of what we normally collect. Okay, so now all of the states went running to the center saying, please give us compensation. The center said, "Arey, we don't have the money to give you with." Correct? Fir bhi, rote, you will find that in December 2019, 1,15,000 crore package was released as a compensation for the period April to November 19. And another 36,400 crores has been released as a compensation by the center to the states on 4th of June. 4th of June को बहुत ज़्यादा pressure आने के बाद the center said that okay, December to Feb, whatever is the compensation which is left, we will now give it to you. Do you understand what is happening here? That firstly, the center does not have the money to give to the states. States are saying that we not only need compensation, but we need it right now, because right now we are starved of funds. From where should I really create my health expenditure? Correct? So February के पैसे तो अभी आए हैं जून में. अभी मार्च, अप्रैल, मई, जून के पैसे न जाने कब आएंगे. But till that time, there is going to be more and more of a tension between the center and the states. So now the states are looking at more and more compensation. It puts the center-state fiscal relationships into a further tight spot. Where do states get their revenues from? There are 4 sources from where states get their revenues. They get their revenue from own tax, from share in central tax, that is the finance commission transfers. They get some grants from the center, and then they get non-tax revenue. Okay? These are the 4 places. There is no 5th place from which states can get money. Now, जिन states के पास own tax का component ज़्यादा है, you know, higher share of own taxes, they are in deeper trouble. Why? Because this money तो center कैसे वैसे करके दे देगा. See, share in central taxes and grants from the center. Center has got unlimited, so to say, borrowing power from the market. So center will move heaven and earth, but center will make sure that your share is paid to you. But own taxes, जहाँ पर 60-70% of the revenue is own taxes, वहाँ पे this is a big problem for the states. Okay, which are these states which have a high percentage of own tax? Karnataka, Telangana, Maharashtra, Punjab, Haryana, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu. All the major states have about 70% of, you know, their revenue coming from own taxes. Within own taxes, those with a higher share of non-SGST are in deep trouble. Again, पूछो क्यों? Because SGST पे compensation मिलेगा. बाकी का कोई compensate करने वाला है नहीं. So more is the non-compensation part, more will be the trouble. Right? In Maharashtra, only 25% comes from SGST, which is going to be compensated. So we are happy there. But what about 75%? That is not going to be compensated by anyone. The Maharashtra government is going to take a hit by itself on that money. Okay. So these are the budget woes for the state governments. All of the state revenues, these are your revenues, they're falling fast and furious. Okay, what is the extent of fall in the revenues? The revenue loss for 21 states has been pegged at about 97,000 crore for just the month of April. This is by India ratings. Other firms will have their own ratings. Now, GST compensation, if at all, it is going to come with a delay. At the same time, state health expenditure, welfare expenditure, okay, migrants ko support karna, chahe baki kuch testing ka expenditure hai, all of those expenses are up. With some states, the problem is more acute. For example, Maharashtra and Delhi have been the epicenter of the COVID crisis. And to that extent, this difference is even more. Okay. So now how do we calculate the impact on state budget? Now here are some gray areas. Okay. What I've told you really is that state revenues are falling and state expenses are rising. What does this mean? That their deficits are going to be rising, obviously. Correct? However, what some states are doing is they are reducing their non-essential expenditure program. Okay, what are other states doing? They are saying that some expenditures are going slow. Okay, non-essential matlab, for example, culture pe jo expenditure hota hai, state governments ka. Okay, that has been curtailed. I'm not saying it is not essential. I'm saying that it has been ranked low in the hierarchy of state expenses. So some of these components have been reduced and this expenditure has been moved towards health expenditure. Some other expenditures might go slow because of the new social distancing norms. However, with all of this, it is largely expected that the reduction in revenues is going to be greater than the reduction in expenses. And so the state deficits are going to be rising. I would have loved to do a prediction for you all. How much will the deficit rise in Maharashtra? How much will it rise in UP? How much will it rise in Assam? But frankly, it is a very difficult to put a number on this. Why? Because so I have written one article, okay, on what can Maharashtra expect? What is the deficit going to be for Maharashtra? And I've quoted it here, and you can take a look at this article later on. But it is frankly very difficult for any economist right now to tell you how much is going to be the deficit in every state. Why? If you understand this now, people, you have understood most of the crux of today's presentation. People, revenue structures of the states are asymmetric. Some states have got higher own revenue. Some states have got higher share of central taxes. Within own revenue, some states have got high SGST, some states have got low SGST. So revenue structures are asymmetric. Compensations also are asymmetric. The center has told them that GST compensation आपको मिलेगा, लेकिन हर एक state को अलग-अलग compensation मिल रहा है. Correct? So compensations are also asymmetric. Expenditure reduction potential is also asymmetric. Okay, just take a look at this. You don't really know how which state is going to react. So today, the impact on the states is going to be asymmetric. So you have a pandemic which has affected everybody. The center has said that we will compensate you. But after saying this, even if the full compensation package is given, the first thing that fiscal federalism design teaches you and me is that the impact of the COVID on the budgets of the state is going to be largely asymmetric. No matter how much Atmanirbhar the center wishes every state to be, every state cannot be Atmanirbhar at the end of this story. This is one of our takeaways as economists before going deeper into this whole discussion. Okay. Now, So tax revenues are falling, compensation ki clarity hai nahi, expenditures are rising. So how the hell should states create their own resources? So what the center has told the states is that you may borrow more than what is normally allowed under the FRBM limits. Okay, normally states are allowed to borrow up to 3% of their gross state domestic product. This time around, states have been allowed to borrow around 5% of, exactly 5% of the GSDP. So what Mrs. Sitaraman is telling the states is that, well, if you are still falling short of resources, then what you need to do is you need to go and start borrowing, right? Now, up to today, you were only allowed to borrow 3% of GSDP. Now you have been allowed to borrow 5% of GSDP. Before going ahead, I'm going to point out a quirk to you, and I hope that this will make sense to all of you. People, 3% of erstwhile GSDP. Dekho, GSDP itself has shrunk now. So 3% of earlier GSDP was more in many cases than 5% of the new GSDP. So this is a smoke screen. That is also what many people are saying, that you've allowed us to borrow more. Lekin if you're allowing me to borrow more of a reduced GSDP, what's the big idea? Okay, so this is a smoke screen. It is not as true as it sounds. Okay, this is one part of the story. Acha, ye 2% jo extra diye hai, wo kaise diye hai? So 50 BPS, that is 0.5% is unconditional. You may, instead of 3%, borrow 3.5%, no questions asked. Additional 100 BPS have been made conditional very wisely. What Mrs. Sitaraman has done is she has assured long pending reforms. She's saying zyada paisa raise karna hai na market se, chalo extra 25 BPS if you implement the one nation one ration card policy. Another 25 BPS you will get if you are doing something for ease of doing business. Another 25 BPS you will get if you get your power distribution structures right. Another 25 BPS you will get if urban local body revenues are enhanced. Okay, and if you manage to meet 3 out of these 4 criteria, then the last 50 BPS you will get. What is not clear so far is who the hell is going to monitor all of this. I do not know. I really don't know, and I've been following the story very, very deeply. But believe me, it sounds great. It is a good move. It's really a good move. Mere end se thumbs up. Where the thumbs down is coming is, who is going to say whether ease of doing business increased for Maharashtra or no? So what is the policy for that? That fine detail has not come out, or maybe it has come out and I have not seen it. But this is something that is a question mark in my mind. Okay. Again, it is very, very difficult to predict how the states are going to respond to this helpline. So, okay, before I take you there, let me give a wrap up of what I have discussed so far. Well, the first thing that we all, I hope, have understood is that there is a very powerful center and then there are states. The states have been told ki chalo pandemic hai, first line of defense has to come from the states, and they're really doing their bit. They are starved of funds. Why? Because all the taxes rest with the center and all the expenses are supposed to be carried out by the states. So what are the states telling the center? Well, we did our GST stuff like you told us to, abhi hame compensate kijiye. Now Mrs. Sitaraman feels damn guilty here. She says, yes, I promised you that and I'm trying to give you that money. The problem is I don't myself have any money to give you on that compensation. Correct? So GST compensation package dena chahiye aur milega bhi. Center will never go back on its word, but it may decide to give this package in November. By that time, it will be too late. So till then, what should the states do here? So what the center has told the states is, ab borrow karo. Chalo, borrow. आज तक आपको सिर्फ 3% borrowing का permission था. Now we are increasing your permission. You are allowed to borrow up to 5% of your GSDP. But in that process, we would like to make sure that this borrowing becomes sustainable, and that means that you have to become a stronger state. You have to put in long pending reforms. Then we will give you the money. Matlab, you will be able to borrow. Okay, so this is where we are. In terms of the package, this is the package. When we look at package, we only look at liquidity infusion, Manrega, blah, blah, blah. That is not the fiscal package. When you're looking at fiscal package, it basically means what is the deal that the center has given to this country. And one of the important stakeholders in this country are the state governments. So what have the state governments got? They've got assurance that they will get their compensation. Then, uske bare mein kuch charcha hai nahi. And they have been told that you can borrow more. Okay, so these are the two things. Now, there are, when we discuss this also, you know, the COVID pandemic has exposed some fault lines. That is the term given by Dr. Raghuram Rajan, and it became very powerful, became a powerful term in the Indian debates. So it has exposed some fault lines in the center-state relationships. Okay. Let me give you a quick example which you'll follow immediately. You remember all those red, green and orange zones, right, that were declared. Now, you know, the lockdown was basically declared under the National Disaster Management Act, and hence this zoning was also done by the center. Many of the states, especially the non-BJP ruled states, have said that if we are supposed to be the managers of this whole show, then shouldn't there be more autonomy for me to declare which is a red zone and which is a green zone? So the zones were declared by the center. The health expenditures were supposed to be done by the states. The zones were declared by the center. The pandemic control was to be done by the states. So these are some of the softer, but yet very, very, I should say, potential for quarrels and trouble is very high here. So these are some of the issues that have come up in the center-state debate when we look at the COVID pandemic. Take a look at this point. This point is another amazing point where you'll start seeing how the center-state relationships are skewed. You remember the PM CARES initiative, right? Wherein citizens could give donations, right? And from there, we were supporting indirectly the thousands of vulnerable people who were affected by this pandemic. However, donations to the PM CARES campaign have been exempted from the CSR funds, from the CSR moves. But those done to the CM Relief Fund have not been given the same exemption. Because of this, what happens is when a company decides to do some kind of a donation, it prefers PM CARES rather than CM Relief. And again, then states are saying that, oh, then we are left asking for money from the center. So this is yet another unequal way in which, you know, states have been treated, claim many of the states. I'm being a very good economist today and I'm saying other people say this, these people say this, other things remaining equal, this happens. But I'm just putting in front of you the many debate angles to federalism under COVID. So one of the questions which the states have been asking again and again is, does the center really view us as equals? Or they are just going to be unilaterally declaring ki ye karna hai and we are left doing the damage control. These are some of the debates that COVID is bringing out very, very sharply. Let us go to part 2. And I see that I have another 15 minutes of talk left. So we are doing good on time. Let me now go to part 2, which is the transfers from the center to state under CSS. And now you will be able to see your Atmanirbhar package. Right? This is, so to say, the package that has been declared by the finance minister, and we are supposed to be doing an assessment of this package. So let us do it together. You'll notice that on the serial numbers, I've done something weird and interesting, which is -4, -3, -1, -2, -1, and then day 0. Okay. So the package before 12th of May and after 12th of May is different. What happened on 12th of May? On 12th of May, the Prime Minister declared that he is giving 20 lakh crore, which is about 10% of the GDP, right, worth of a package to the Indians. Correct? However, and after that, all of these tranches started. So tranche 1 was declared immediately on 13th of May. So you can see the dates. 12th May ko announcement aaya, and then 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. The 5 tranches came in quick succession in the next 5 days. However, the damage control has started before. So right on 26th of March, the finance minister had declared the Prime Minister Garib Kalyan Yojana, under which 1.7 lakh crore package was declared. This is about 0.85% of the GDP. On 27th of March in quick succession, another 3.74 crore of package was declared by her, which is 1.8% of the GDP. This is a big amount, but it was mostly the major theme in this particular announcement was liquidity injection by the Reserve Bank of India. On 17th of April, another 1 lakh crore of package has been declared. This is also liquidity injection by the RBI. On 27th of April, yet another package was declared worth 50,000 crore. This was a special liquidity facility for mutual funds. So it is again in the banking finance theme, right? It is not really a direct demand creation theme. On 12th of May, as I told you, the Atmanirbhar 20 lakh crore package announcement came in, but the details have come out later. Acha, about this 20 lakh crore thingy, I'm sure that you have all seen this. This is Gisa Pita by now, but let me just tell you this, that 20 lakh crore is not over and above what was announced in the budget. It is like the total expenses or the support which will be given by the center in this fiscal year, right? Which includes many of these things also. So 20 lakh crore package which was announced includes this 1.7 lakh crore which was announced under Garib Kalyan Yojana. It includes 3.74 lakh crore which was a liquidity injection given by the RBI for different purposes. Okay, all right. Now the first tranche which came out on 13th May, the focus was on MSMEs, and again it was on liquidity given to the MSMEs. This was a big package, 5.94 lakh crore, but again this has been largely routed through the Reserve Bank of India. Tranche 2 was a major theme was about free food grain supply to be distributed to the migrant laborers, because by then the labor movement had become very sharp. This was a 3.1 lakh crore package. Tranche 3, the major theme was agriculture, agricultural infrastructure, the PM Kisan scheme, the Matsya scheme. There are so many schemes that were announced here. I'm going to talk a little bit about agriculture slightly later. So this is 1.5 lakh crore, which was another big package that was given. Then tranche 4 was basically about VGF, viability gap funding, and that was it was a small package, 8,100 crores. And then the big whammy came in on 17th of May, which was when she announced that 40,000 crore additional over and above the 61,500 that has already been budgeted for will be given for Manrega. This total thing plus a little bit more here and there comes to 20 lakh crore. This is the Atmanirbhar package in its basic lines. Okay. Now, if you take a look at, okay, so let me talk a little bit very quickly about what a fiscal package should be really doing. And let me address the student community, faculty. I'm sure, forgive me, but we have to take the students in our stride when we go here. Students, there are two types of major policies. Now, there is the fiscal policy and then there is a monetary policy. Right? These are, their objectives are very different. What does the fiscal policy do? The fiscal policy basically creates demand. Right? Fiscal policy, many people very loosely say fiscal policy, and that's about tax and subsidies. Okay, now it's a very basic definition, but I still stand by it. Okay, it is about tax and subsidies, right? When the government reduces the taxes, what does it do? It gives more money into the hands of the consumer and hopes that the consumer will go and start spending that money. When the consumer starts spending that money, he or she starts creating income for the sabzi wala, for the textile guy, for the car wala, for any other people from whom you are buying stuff. Correct? What is a fiscal package supposed to be doing? It's supposed to create demand. Monetary policy, on the other hand, is a policy which controls a different set of variables. For example, it controls the interest costs to the businesses. It controls the inflation. It controls price stability. It controls price choppiness over a period of time. Okay, and so on and so forth, right? Now, if you take a look at the 20 lakh crore package, you will find, I'm not telling you anything new. This has been all over the news. Arnab Goswami has been shouting about this for the past 1 month now, correct? Of the 20 lakh crore package, you will find that 18 lakh crores have been routed through the Reserve Bank of India as a liquidity support to the businesses. Which businesses? Small businesses. Which businesses? Agricultural businesses. Is that correct? Absolutely. But is it a fiscal package? No. Okay. So Atmanirbhar, and by the way, Atmanirbhar was, Mr. Modi never said that I'm giving a fiscal package. He said Atmanirbhar Bharat Nirman karna hai. Ab ye Bharat Nirman karne mein, he has preferred to give 18 lakh crore as a liquidity infusion and 2 lakh crore as a fiscal package. Okay, so if you take a look at this first point that I have written here, the actual fiscal cost to the government is 2.17 lakh crore only. Most of this package is liquidity driven, and this has been a major criticism of the package that has been declared. Nobody is saying do not support the MSMEs. Okay, but the thing is कि आप अगर MSMEs को support कर रहे हो, आप collateral free loan दे रहे हो farmers को. Okay, or you are saying that we will put a moratorium. That means you have already taken a loan. You were supposed to give an interest to the bank. For 3 months, don't give interest. For 6 months, don't give interest. This is a relief, sure. But the thing is that if I have a kitty, I am waiting for you to come and take a loan from it. Who is going to take a loan in the pandemic? So end of the day, there is only so much that monetary policies can do. John Maynard Keynes, who is the I'm sure many of you must have studied him, who gave us the foundation for Keynesian macroeconomics. The basic premise of Keynesian macroeconomics is that monetary policy does not work in a recession. Why? Because you might reduce the interest rate, अरे लेकिन उस interest rate में loan लेगा कौन? So how will the system start? Instead, if the government directly starts spending, and Keynes had given an extremely bad and very popularly quoted example of a fiscal package. He had said, let one man dig a hole and another man fill it in. Okay. What does this mean? When one man digs a hole, you are creating income for one man. He goes home and he buys bread and butter. He buys biscuits. He buys shampoos. He buys soaps. What happens? The shampoo maker, HLL and PNG, start saying, "Arey, there's an uptick in sales." So HLL and PNG now start taking more and more labor. They give income to their labor. Those labor further go out and start buying tomato ketchup from Kisan. Kisan says, "Oh, there is an uptick in sales." What does Kisan do? Start sourcing more and more tomatoes from the farmer in Nashik. The Nashik man feels happier. What does he do? Buys fertilizers. The fertilizer company says, hey, there is an uptick in sales. Why? Why? Because one man was digging a hole. This is the multiplier system. Okay. So the basic issue with the Atmanirbhar package is not about its intentions. What the economy needs right now is a fiscal infusion, and what the government has overwhelmingly supported is a liquidity infusion. This has been one of the criticisms, and let me not dilly-dally around many economists. Let me also tell you that right now what the economy needs, according to me, is also a fiscal infusion, which should have been done very sharply. The best part of this package, which I liked, was tranche 5. I loved it that she has given 40,000 crore more for Manrega. What is Manrega? What happens under this National Rural Employment Guarantee Act? Okay, so let me quickly talk about Manrega and then we will discuss all of these points. Okay, Manrega is basically, guys, suppose I stay in a village, okay, and I am jobless. And I go and I apply to my Gram Panchayat and I say that, look, I do not have a job, I need a job. Then under Manrega, Manrega is an Employment Guarantee Act. It's an act of the parliament. That means that it is legally binding on the government to create an employment guarantee. Correct? For whom? Urban area में क्या ये act provide किया जाता है? नहीं. So Manrega, the domain of Manrega is the villages. If there is a dweller in a Gram Panchayat who does not have a job, he goes and approaches a Gram Panchayat and fills in a form and says that I need a job under Manrega. The government is promising you a job inside the next 15 mandates. Okay. Now, if Manrega, on Manrega, if the center is spending 40,000 crore more, then you ask me, that is great news, because what you're doing is you're directly creating income for scores of migrant laborers who have gone back home to their villages, and that is the need of the hour. Once this money is put into their hands, what are they going to do? As I told you, they're going to buy sachet packs of shampoos and chai and shakkar and whatnot, thereby starting the demand cycle. So this, if you ask me, these 40,000 crores are money which is very, very well spent. There is also a very wonderful component of fiscal spending in the Garib Kalyan Yojana, which I'm going to talk about next. Let me just go through these points and we will come to the Garib Kalyan Yojana. So actual fiscal cost to the government has only been 2 point something lakh crore, even if it's a 20 lakh crore package. Now, this entire thing has been driven through schemes. Remember, centrally sponsored schemes. Now, please understand that in Manrega, when the state is supporting 40,000 crore, sorry, when the center is giving 40,000 crore, the state also has to put in 15,000 crore from its own kitty. Okay, now I am not sure that states will have those kind of funds in their own kitty to support this move. Do you understand this? So I'm very happy about Manrega, but I'm worried about the fact that will the states have it in them? Will they have the wherewithal to do their bit of the spending? Okay. Now, So while we say that, oh great, 40,000 crores will be spent, it is very difficult for us to predict which state will be a major beneficiary of these schemes, because end of the day, the state has to put in its own money and then it will get the central tranche. Correct? So today it is very, very difficult for us to understand who is going to be the major beneficiary of this scheme. Let me look at the Garib Kalyan Yojana, some of the main features of this 1.7 lakh crore. I was very happy when she announced this, and I thought many of these things made immense sense to me as an economist. The first thing that she announced was increment in Manrega wages from 182 rupees per man day to 202 rupees per man day. So there was a 20 rupees per day increase, okay, in Manrega spending. Then she said that we are trying to look at food security, which was a big problem, which continues to be a big problem in this pandemic. And I was very happy to see that there are 5 kg cereal, either rice or wheat, depending on the state, per month to be given to the beneficiaries for a period of 3 months. 1 kilo of dal, which is the protein component of this whole thing, to be again given free for 3 months. And then there was free LPG for Ujjwala beneficiaries for 3 months. There was for widows, for handicapped people, ex gratia payments to the tune of 500 rupees to 1000 rupees. For Jan Dhan Yojana, the women account holders in Jan Dhan Yojana, they were going to get some payments in their accounts and so on and so forth. Right? Is this good? It's good. But let me tell you that in Maharashtra, the Manrega wages are already at 220 rupees. When this was announced, I checked the GR. So for Maharashtra, we are already at 220 rupees. So this does not really benefit Maharashtra at all. You understand what I'm saying, right? That even if this is a package, the package is good. I am not sure how much of it comes to this state. I am not sure how much of it will go to UP. Okay. Similarly, PDS. There are states in which PDS works beautifully. Kerala is a case in point. So when you are saying 5 kg cereal moved and 5 kg dal, 1 kg dal moved for a period of 3 months, Kerala is going to be a big beneficiary of this whole thing, right? PDS, Maharashtra has traditionally not worked. We have not been in a great space on PDS, and so it may not benefit us to the same tune that it will benefit Kerala. Similarly, free LPG for Ujjwala beneficiaries, which means that you are piggybacking on a scheme which is already in place, to which different states have different exposures. Correct? So the benefits depend on whether states have the wherewithal to demand funds and to complete the required compliances. Let me go back to the Manrega example. I know there are a lot of things I'm saying, and I hope that you all are following the debate as I walk you through it. In Manrega, people, there are small little things which are about compliances. For example, there is that, as I told you, there is a person in a Gram Panchayat, usko hame 15 din ke andar job dena hai. So humne de diya. What is the thing that he is doing? Well, he is creating some Gram Sadak, right? He is working on some farm or whatever. So he is creating some assets under Manrega. Fine. Now the thing is that once that job is done, then the state has to tell the center, look, itna ye kaam ho gaya, now you have to release the next tranche to us. Under Manrega, you know, the center does not say, yellow, 5,000 crore, and karo jo kaam karna hai. Never. What does the center do? It will give you 1,000 crore. It will say that, well, how have you utilized the 1,000 crore? Give me a utilization certificate. Give me a UC. Once you give me the UC, I will give you the next 1,000 crore. Now, many states do not know that they have to issue this UC at all, because the UC has to be issued by the Talaki at the Gaon level. Then it will get clubbed at the district level, collector office. Then it will get clubbed up at the state level office, and the state will tell the center, for this you need a basic MIS system in place, jo ki hai nahi. So there are many states, typical states, where they lost out on Manrega because of compliance is Rajasthan. Rajasthan could not really create a quick compliance system, because of which they could not get good benefits initially under Manrega. Let me tell you another example where Manrega works. Manrega works in the south. Why? Literacy, IT literacy, all MIS systems are in place. Taka-tak, everybody is on an IT platform. So यहाँ पर job हो गया, so गाँव to taluka, taluka to district, district to state, and state to center. Everything is fitted onto an IT platform. No questions asked. You see, the utilization certificate is auto-generated from the system. Where are you? And in Rajasthan, तलाटी के पीछे दौड़ना पड़ता है कि भैया sign करो. So do you follow what is happening? The issue is that which state will get how much of this package is something that is not in our hands. And so is the package a good one? So what is the basic takeaway from this slide? There are 2-3 takeaways. One is, while it is a 20 lakh crore package, it is not a 20 lakh crore package. It is a 2 lakh crore package in fiscal terms. It's a 18 lakh crore package in liquidity terms. This is not a good balance. What you need in a recession is a fiscally dominated package. What we have given in India is a monetarily dominated package. That's point number 1. Point number 2, जहां जहां हमने खर्च किया है ना schemes के द्वारा, वहां पे we do not know whether the poor states will have the wherewithal to cook up those funds. Cook up is a wrong word. To give the supporting funds in order to get the benefit from this package. So are we in a way increasing the inequality between states during the COVID pandemic? These are designer issues that we will have to think about when we go ahead. I am nearly done. This is the last slide. The design of Indian federalism is changing, is what I have written here. And I would like to tell you all something very exciting which happened in the agricultural space. Okay. When the package was announced for agriculture, the finance minister also made a very exciting announcement. She said that since we are doing so much, why not use this platform in order to complete some of the long pending reforms in agriculture. End of the day, what you want is that food processors, for example, before we come to this slide, don't read the slide, I'll tell you about it. देखो अभी क्या है, suppose you're a tomato ketchup manufacturer, or you're a macro, strawberry jam आप करते हो, or you're making some pickles, okay, or think about haldi powder, any food product that you can think of, right? What does the food processor do here? You have to buy strawberries, you have to buy haldi, matlab turmeric, basic bulbs, you will have to buy ginger, you will have to buy pickles के लिए कच्चा आम or whatever. From where do you buy all of this? From the farmers. But can you directly go and buy from the farmers? Well, in the Indian context, in Maharashtra for the past 2 years, you can directly buy from the farmers, but mostly in all of the states, farmers were told that the first sale of agricultural products should be in the Agriculture Produce Market Committees, the APMCs. Okay. Now, so farmers go to the APMC, वहाँ पे commission agent होता है, and what does the commission agent do? He buys from the farmer, he takes a commission in that whole thing, and he auctions it off to the sellers. So the sellers get their stuff and they go ahead. Now, in this pandemic, please understand that farmer going to the mandi basically means there is harvesting labor. कोई truck भरेगा, वहाँ पर there is labor to load that truck. APMC में आने के बाद unloading के लिए labor, then auction होगा. बहुत सारे बायर्स हो गए, सोशल डिस्टेंसिंग की धज्जियां उड़ जाती है, करेक्ट, एंड देन द बायर विल अगेन लोड इट इनटू हिज ट्रक, he takes it to his factory, then it gets converted into haldi powder, then it gets packed. So many people touching that product throughout the food value chain, and then it comes to me, touched by hundreds of people in a pandemic. Scary. So one thing which we've been wanting to do for a long period of time is to compress this value chain, to make quickly farmer to producer, quick, directly producer को farmer से लेने दो, directly consumer को farmer से लेने दो, right? So the pandemic offered us a golden opportunity to get this stuff done, and she has done it. So now let me read you through the slide, and I'm sure you will follow what is happening here. The center has used the COVID opportunity to pass some far-reaching agricultural reforms. One of these is to allow farmers to sell to whoever and wherever across India. Earlier, the first sale of agricultural produce was only done at the APMCs, right? Today, this has been revised, a new legislation has been passed, and so a farmer in Maharashtra can sell to a trader in Madhya Pradesh and to a food processor in Jammu Kashmir. There is no problem at all. Okay. Now here, however, again, since we're talking about fiscal federalism, these are slightly technical points, but guys, last points for the presentation. So I hope that you will understand these. See, under Schedule 7, our constitution has created a union list, a state list, and a concurrent list. And agriculture is very much in the state list. It is entry 14 in the state list, and markets and fairs are entry 28 in the state list. So especially the non-BJP states have been telling the finance minister, hello, agriculture is a state subject, aap hote kaun ho, APMC Act ko change karne wale. How can the center really change the APMC Act? So the center has invoked Article 301. Unhone bhi legal backup liya hi hai. Now under Article 301, subject to the provisions of this part, trade and commerce throughout the territory of India shall be free. So they're saying it's overriding above any other entry quoted in any other part of the constitution. And so the center stand has been that APMCs can still carry out their business. You can still collect, states can still collect APMC tax and so on and so forth. Uh, but basically it's time to open up the markets, right? So in a nutshell, this is what we have studied today. The design of federalism is in India is skewed. States in India are non-uniform in size, in their fiscal positions, in their development levels, and in their population densities. So the COVID has also affected us differentially. Maharashtra, for example, is in the eye of the storm, correct? This calls for differential package as per state requirements. But the design of federalism and fiscal systems is such that this is not always tenable. So the center has given out GST compensations to the extent possible. It has declared Atmanirbhar package, creating schemes through which the vulnerable can be supported. There is criticism that this package is more about liquidity infusion rather than direct demand creation. Further, the design is such that it creates an asymmetric impact of the package. All states will not benefit equally from this package. Last bit, promise, last slide for the day. So what happens then? How should we go ahead? Well, these are a few suggestions from my end. The package by itself should have been, and in the future, whatever comes through should be more focused on direct demand creation. Fiscal packages are a need of the day and nobody can get away with that. Direct spending by the government is going to be crucial in the months ahead because it creates quick and broad-based multipliers. One of the things which the center can do or think about doing is that it may reduce the state share in the funding of the scheme so that the poorer states can quickly avail of the scheme provision. For example, these are मुझे देखना पड़ेगा, but I think Manrega is 60-40. 60% comes from the center and 40% comes from the state. I might be wrong on the numbers. I can't remember it too clearly. So they might want to do a 70-30 on Manrega. So increase the central impact and reduce the state level impact so that it actually goes through to all the vulnerable parts of the society. Allow deviations in some of the scheme rules. I've commented on one of those. For example, in Manrega, one of the rules is that 33% of the beneficiaries have to be women. So until such a time that the Gram Panchayat gets 10 people to work, of which 4 are women, now it cannot start the job work at all. Now such things can at least be stopped. Right, so some of our rules, some of the rules can be given a deviation. Okay, so this is something that they may want to consider. It is not only about compensation. Okay, it is also about the timing. GST compensation आपको मिलेगा, ये कहना enough नहीं है. GST compensation कब मिलेगा, ये भी तो बोलना पड़ेगा. So right now, it's not a question of insolvency. It is a question of illiquidity. Okay, solvency का कोई issue है नहीं यहाँ पर. We're talking about center state finances, right? These are legal bodies. So we are not talking about insolvency right now, but the liquidity is not there with the states. So that liquidity has to be enhanced with immediate effect. So compensation package milega is not an answer. Compensation package abhi milega ki nahi has to be debated. So the quicker cash flow management has to be undertaken. And the last suggestion which has come in from my end is that there are certain grants which are being given to the center by the center to the states. These are there in the union budget. If you look at the budget documents, right, you are able to see that these grants have been planned through the year. I'm saying unko front load kar do na. Abhi problem hai na, to abhi de do na grants. And don't make them conditional. For example, some grants are conditionally given for airports. Some grants are conditionally given for roads. So आप conditionality निकाल दो, use करने दो, अभी pandemic में ही जाएगा सब कुछ पैसा. Correct. So these are some of the ways in which the COVID pandemic can be viewed from the lens of federalism, right? I have given you some of the suggested readings, people, and I would request Aparna or maybe Aditi to share this list with you all later on. So these are some of the readings wherein you will have a very interesting read on fiscal federalism, center-state relationships, tax sharing, scheme devolvement, and all of that. And perhaps you can go through the debate itself. So that's about it from my end. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, we do have about 10-15 minutes left. So Aparna, over to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you for this excellent session. Very informative. We have learned a lot out of it. So now I think I should start with myself. I have a first question, which is regarding the Atmanirbhar package again. And then since it is said that we need to be Atmanirbhar, what can be really done to become fiscally self-reliant in terms of the states in the country? So then what states can do to become fiscally self-reliant or to maintain the fiscal strength, because we don't have fiscal discipline in many of the states in India. So what can be done to do that?
Okay. May I immediately answer this question?
Yeah. Then later on, I'll ask you other questions.
Cool. Okay. So your question, Aditi, is how can states become fiscally reliant? Well, the first step to be taken here is to understand where do the revenues for the states come from. They come from their own tax revenue and it comes from non-tax revenue. There is of course a part which will come in from the center. That is okay. That is grants being given by the center and so forth. Now, jo own tax revenue hai, let me give you the case study of Maharashtra itself, because Maharashtra is a state that I've studied deeply. Now, you will find that in Maharashtra, the tax GSDP ratio has actually been falling over a period of time. Now, surely such a trend is unacceptable. Tax GSDP ratio keeps on falling over a period of time, which means that as the GSDP has increased, we have been unable to make sure that taxes are buoyant. A 1% increase in GSDP is today not fructifying into a 1% increment in the tax revenue. Why is this happening? Well, there are issues in terms of tax collections. Right, there are a lot of loopholes in the basic way that the system has been designed. One immediate loophole is, I'll tell you an immediate loophole, land revenues, for example. If you take a look at land revenues, ye digitize abhi tak nahi hue hai Maharashtra mein. A state such as Karnataka, a state such as Telangana has been able to digitize all of its land records. Why can't Maharashtra digitize its land records? If you do the digitization, it's very, very easy to see that this person, Mr. A, owns so much of land, Mr. B owns so much of land revenue should have come into the state coffer, but it has not come in. I mean, create some kind of a penalty structure on it. So I think that wherever we can put in an IT infrastructure in terms of creating better tax systems, that is one definite way in which we can become fiscally more reliant. The other way in which you can become fiscally more reliant is by also focusing on the non-tax revenue. What are typically our non-tax revenues? And this is true of all states in the country. There is a sorry state of affairs. The non-tax revenue will come from stuff such as tolls, for example. Non-tax revenue will come from interest received by the state government. Non-tax revenue will come from dividends and profits. Each state it supports its own public sector enterprises. These are loss-making. So the non-tax revenue, I mean, you will get your dividends and profits if the damn thing makes a profit, na? So why are the state enterprises not making a profit? Again, it's a question of bad management. Right? It's a question of political will that we are unable to close down those public sector units jahan par profit ya losses chal rahe sar dar sar. In Maharashtra, we take about 25 years to close down one public sector unit, which is a loss-making unit. That means for 25 years, that unit remains alive. That means those laborers have to be given their salaries for 25 years, and there is absolutely nothing coming in from the opposite side. So what we need to do is also make sure our non-tax revenue goes up very, very quickly. In order to do that, one, get new blood into the public sector companies, two, get good reforms into the public sector companies, and three, have a quick exit policy. We only think about increasing the numbers that we have with us, but wherever we are making losses, just shut it off. Have a quick exit policy. That is what is supposed to happen through the ease of doing business. So I told you 2 points for becoming fiscally more reliant. One is tax revenue ko increase karne ke liye IT infrastructure. Second is non-tax revenues ko increase karne ke liye exit policies. And the third, which I wish to talk about, is to curb the non-necessary expenditures which state governments undertake, or at least ask relevant questions when you are undertaking expenditures. In Maharashtra, for example, the state government gives a contingent guarantee whenever a loan is taken on by a cooperative. This is now politically determined. So such kind of liabilities the state government need not take up at all, right? So these are the areas where we can focus. I think at least, I mean, it may not give us big numbers, but whatever is our deficit, I am telling you that we should be able to reduce our deficit by at least 0.5% if these things are put into place. And that is saying something, because if our actual fiscal deficit stands at about 3.5% of GSDP in Maharashtra, and we can bring it down to 3% of GSDP, it will still be a big relief. Right? So that's the answer to your query.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Now, Aditi ma'am wants to ask you something. Aditi
Yes.
ma'am?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
Aditi.
ma'am.
Okay, hi Mansi. I just want to ask you one thing. Just now you mentioned that Maharashtra government has not updated its land record data. But last time me and Professor Sangeeta, we were working with the Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices, and we met various stakeholders. And this is 2 years ago. And now the situation is that the data for land records is almost done. Sangeeta ma'am, can you please talk about this? It is called Satbaracha Uttara in Marathi.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is that work is done. So Maharashtra government has been working on it for last 5-6 years.
Yeah, and the work is not done. Because right now also the Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute has been given a contract to undertake the remnant of the digitization of records, and they are saying that nearly 30% of the work is still not done.
30% is not done. Okay.
But again, we have Sangeeta ma'am with us. Ma'am, if you can just unmute and talk about it, that'll be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I mean, actually, this topic is slightly out of the main focus of your theme.
Yeah.
But of course, I think it is a challenge for Maharashtra, but we are improving on it in a big way. So maybe from 30% it has come down to 10%. That's what I think. But given that it's a big state and there are so many, farmers, more than 1 crore farmers, it's a bit of a challenge. But I think that, in fact, I forgot the name of the commissioner when Mr. Nitin was there. And we had worked with him more than when I was in a World Bank project sometime in 2000, 2001. He had taken in fact, Gokhale Institute, Professor Vadava. This was his pet subject. And he was working with the commissioner for land records. And the matter was being expedited. So I really don't know why. I mean, maybe the progress is on, but not perfect. That's all I could say.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, because
I think anyway, it's just that you've given it more as an example rather than,
Yeah, but ma'am, frankly, it is having so many benefits that the more quickly we get it done. For example, I did one study with Sangeeta ma'am on the Prime Minister Fasal Bima Yojana. And again, one of the things that we realized was that when a farmer takes a loan, okay, he has a bank account which is seeded with Aadhaar, but his land record is not seeded with Aadhaar. So it's fairly difficult for me to understand whether one Mr. XYZ who has this bank account is also the same guy who owns this piece of land and who is now claiming insurance because he has a crop loss on that piece of land. Right? So again, the numbers could be different, but what I heard, ma'am, is 30% is still remaining. So I think Maharashtra needs to really quickly do this. The forerunners have been Karnataka and Telangana. Odisha has done a wonderful job. Odisha has gone on the IT infrastructure. Yes, Aditi.
Thank you, Mansi. Thank you so much.
So we can take up the matter with the government of Maharashtra.
Really should.
Yeah.
Really should. Yes, ma'am.
So can we move to the other question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So, ma'am, do you think that MNREGA is going to be an efficient or a very powerful kind of scheme, considering the pandemic situation and the lockdown period in various parts of the country?
Now, this is a tricky one. This is a tricky one. Because on one hand, you have social distancing norms, right, which have to be adhered to. And on the other, you need people to come together and start working on a scheme. So this is a seriously tricky one. I don't have any answer on this. I know as an economist that MNREGA is the one solution that we can definitely undertake very, very quickly. However, in order to do so, किसी भी construction site पर यही है ना, that how do you make sure that those social distancing norms are followed by the people, are adhered by the people. It is again, I'll tell you what will happen. The Sarkari notice will come out wherein the Talati is told that, oh, make sure that it is being followed. And then the Talati will also generate some kind of a paper at the end of the day saying that it was followed. Okay, now Ramjane hota hai ya nahi hota hai? Now, these are some of the big questions because these could also be the super spreaders. All scared of right now. Hai na? So this is a seriously tricky one, Aparna. But if I were to take an escape route and answer you as an economist, I think this is the one solution that we have to make sure that quick income is created at the grassroots.
I can add one point.
Yes, ma'am.
If they don't generate work, they give the unemployment subsidy, that bhatta, what they call.
Yeah.
You said the Kinishan example. as
Correct.
they get money in the hand,
Yeah.
Yeah.
whether the
I
asset is
think
created or no.
Yeah, yeah. So which means pretty much create income and
Yeah.
don't really insist on that.
Asset creation or work, right?
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I think you have answered the corollary question, which was supposed to be the next one. That is, because of this lockdown and the migration of the workers, there's going to be increase in the poverty. So then, how the government can handle the poverty issue post the pandemic?
Now, again, in order to handle the poverty, what you need in some kind of an income creation scheme, right, at the urban and the rural grassroots levels, right? So one thing which we need to quickly do through is Manrega, which will create quick incomes at the rural levels. We also need to hope that as these incomes start getting created, they will in turn generate more and more employment for the other smaller segments which pertain to rural consumption. For example, now it is really too much to say this also, but cycles ka jo sale hota hai, two-wheelers, and I'm talking about cycles, I'm not even talking about bikes. Okay, basic cycle sales are connected to the income levels, right? So if you manage to create income levels, then you manage to generate some level of demand for cycles. But let us not even get into that cycle zone. I think even if we manage to create some demand for FMCG goods, small sachet packs, small packets, and I think this is the new revolution which will come in. CK Prahlad has already told us about fortune at the bottom of the pyramid, right? And I think that most FMCG companies are already very, very alive to the fact that they will need to reduce their package size substantially in the wake of the COVID. So I think that we are now all staring at a space where you will have 100 grams ki chini, 100 grams ka chai, and so on and so forth being sold, or 50 gram even. Right, and that is clearly the way to go ahead to boost the sales, and then that employment will get created at the FMCG level, and that should hopefully roll over also to the urban areas. In the meanwhile, in the urban areas also, whatever construction projects could be undertaken, for example, the metro project or building of express highways, airports, whatever are the heavy duty construction level projects, those should be completed quickly. I think that is the way to go.
I think that way we'll be able to tackle the urban poverty also and the constraints in the urban area. Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. The other question is about the loan moratorium. So then, do you think that it's a rational policy to continue the loan moratorium for 6 months? And also, there is a discussion going on that the RBI is also planning to waive off, or the government is planning to waive off the interest also, not just EMI but the interest as well.
Yeah. So right now, I think that given that the income levels are under a cloud, and in many of the companies, either retrenchment is happening, or you will have many other companies, for example, Reliance, to quote an example, which is doing a 10 to 15% salary cut for employees with a salary above X lakh, not for everybody across the board. Now, however, it is also important for us to realize that if your income is above, let us say 10 lakh of rupees per year, where that salary cut has been given, it is also this segment of people who are more likely to have taken a loan. Correct. Now, when you get a salary cut suddenly 10%, 15%, and you see your colleagues on the bench and you're saying, hey, tomorrow it might be my, turn to go out of a job, it becomes very, very scary for any individual person to handle a loan payment, which is happening at an alarming frequency monthly, wherein your salary is under a cloud. So I think the moratorium is a good idea in terms of creating confidence and in terms of at least giving some kind of a respite. I am not very sure whether we will have it in ourselves to give it for the next 6 months. I think a lot of these things, these will have to be tweaked as and when the recovery starts happening. So there are two kinds of recoveries. If you can think of just a graph on x-axis and y-axis, here you have the economic recovery space, and here you have the COVID recovery space. Right? So if your economic recovery also happens quickly and the COVID recovery, that is COVID pandemic, comes under control in the next 2 or 3 months, then that is the safest zone for you. And then we can stop the moratorium after 3 months. However, think of the other extreme. Just today in the paper, every day you get a new forecast, right? Which is equally scary as the earlier one. Now, today's forecast is telling me that India is going to face her peak of the pandemic only in November. Now, that is maddening here. That means till November, we are going to be at home, scared, not consuming. And in November, apparently, there's going to be a peak. Now, in such a case, what can one do but keep the moratorium on? So I really think that policymakers will also be on a wait and watch in terms of understanding that after the lockdown, how does the pandemic move? After the lockdown, how are the consumption patterns moving? I think the one place that a lot of people you read in the papers every day, one thing which is recovering very, very quickly is the ready to eat category, right? So biscuits have gone up. Now in the lockdown, ready to cook category was very, very hot, but we've already transgressed that line from ready to cook to ready to eat. That means people have also now started directly purchasing things which are ready in terms of consumption. So there is already some movement. In terms of apparel, etc., pent-up demand jitni hai utni satisfy ho rahi hai, but not really otherwise. In terms of consumer durables, there is a demand for washing machines, there is a demand for dishwashers, there is a demand for vacuum cleaners. And these are the three categories jahan par sales bhi zyada hai. There is also a demand for laptops because the youngsters want to get onto Netflix and Amazon Prime and Donas. There is a demand for earphones. There is a demand for dongles. These are the places where the demand has started pushing up. Now, this is pent-up demand, travel demand. There is pent-up demand because for the past 3 months, we've been unable to attend business meetings in, say, Mumbai or in Gurgaon or whatever. But once that pent-up demand goes down, now again, what next? We don't know, right? We don't know right now. So it's difficult for anybody to give a prediction. So my answer, Aparna, here is that I think the RBI will also be on a wait and watch. And in another 3 months, they'll tweak the guidelines somewhat. But right now, the moratorium is a good idea.
I think your travel demand.
Thank you. Now there are two connected questions, ma'am. One is about
one second, Aparna, before you say, I think Sangeeta ma'am was.
No, you said about the
Yeah.
travel demand rather than the pent-up business. I think it was the people who wanted to go to their comfort zones.
Yes, ma'am. Going back home,
Yeah.
sure, absolutely.
Yeah. That was more than the business. Was business
Yes, ma'am.
online
Yes,
now?
agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Aparna.
So the two connected questions are, first one is, has the COVID pandemic taken into consideration when the government was designing the package?
I'm sorry, I did not follow you. Sorry, come again.
The question is, has the COVID pandemic impact is taken into account by the government? Because some states have been hit, I mean, worse than some other states in the country. So then was that taken into account? And the second is it possible for the central government to increase the package of the size beyond 1%?
Okay. So there are two things. Firstly, has it taken into account that the speed with which the pandemic is moving in different states is different? Obviously, because you can, I mean, it's there for everybody to see that Delhi is in trouble, Maharashtra is in trouble. However, can we change our system equivalently flexibly in order to make sure that Maharashtra gets a bigger package? Answer is no. So to the extent that Maharashtra says that, well, our SGST has really suffered and so our compensation should be more, to that extent you can support them. But you cannot say that so much Manrega I'm declaring only for Maharashtra. You cannot really do that. 15th Finance Commission gives a formula saying that if this, I mean, if you have got so much of forest cover, if you've got so much of population, if you've got so much of tax effort, then you should get so much of funds. Such a formula does not have COVID pandemic speeds built into it. So perhaps the state should also try to think of a formulaic distribution wherein it will say that more is the issue, more will be the transfer that is given to a particular state. That could be one potential thing. But right now, the design is not that flexible at all. Except for the FC space, we don't really do that. What was your second question? Sorry, come again.
The second question was, is it possible to increase the package size?
Well, yes. Technically, yes. Can the center borrow more from the Reserve Bank of India and then monetize it? Answer is yes. Is that a good idea? I'm not too sure, because whenever you start monetizing your deficits, okay, it may not create inflation in the immediate short run because right now the demand levels are kaput. However, centers for most part also think about sustainability over a period of time. It's not just a question of raising the money right now and quickly spending it. It's also a question of whether we are sustainable over the medium term or no, right? So I think inside the 20 lakh crore package, the 2 lakh crore was really too small. That should have been raised somewhat at the cost of the monetary package size. That is one of the things that perhaps can be done. So what I am supporting right now is a switch in the expenditure, not an increment in the total expenditure. I am saying that थोड़ा सा जो loans के लिए support है वो कम करके, if we can put that into a direct fiscal package, that will work wonders. That is my answer to this question.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. So that's it. So
Okay.
thank you for this excellent session. Now I request my
Thank you.
student Ria to propose the vote of thanks. Ria?
Okay, Ria, before you do that, let me also thank you, Aparna, especially for all the support you've provided, Aditi, and all of the others that I met today. Thank you. It's been a great experience. And I must thank the Cotted, right? I did not know about it, but now that I do, I thank everybody here. Annapurna ma'am, thank you. It was very, very nice and gracious of you to come here and attend the entire webinar. Thank you, students. Thank you, everybody.
Mansi, thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
ma'am.
Sangeeta ma'am, I should be thanking you on a knee for coming here, having attended this, and also for your very interesting and enlightening comments. Thank you, ma'am.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mansi Phadke, for this phenomenal talk. It has been a very interesting hour listening to you. The way you said the background and the context and the clarity throughout has been so amazing. I think everyone followed you each and every sentence of the way. Thank you
That's
very much.